Now Linda Zuern will be coming up and discuss the Mass GOP 2014 State Convention.
Thank you. I just want to let you know that I was an independent and unenrolled all my life until a year ago when I decided it wasn't enough just to be a Tea Party person, that the only way you're going to make some change is to become involved in the Republican Party. So I joined Mara and I became a Republican, and I was really enthused about going to the convention because I'm also a selectman. This is my third term. I've run 4 times and won 3. And I knew Mark Fisher was running, and I wanted to be able to go to the convention and vote for him. So it was worth becoming a Republican just to do that. And I was so excited about going. It was my first time going to a convention. I was looking forward to it. We had 2 buses from the Cape. I think Alice and Roger were there as well. The convention dragged on forever. It seemed biased. Charlie Baker got music when he came on stage, and Mark Fisher didn't. They had fanfare for Charlie Baker. Mark Fisher just got, quiet applause. So the meeting was supposed to be finished by 2:30. It didn't finish till 3:30, and our bus was supposed to be there at 3:30 to pick us up. The voting started, and some people were walking around didn't even know that the voting was taking place. So they didn't even announce that. Some of the people that came in the bus with us were chit-chatting with us, and they were supposed to be up in another section voting. So we finally took the vote, and we didn't know what the process was, but somebody came down the aisle, our state committee woman, and she had the tablet in her hands. And it was sort of facing down like this, and she was standing here. So she asked Mark Swan next to me who he was voting for, and he said Mark Fisher, and she marked that column. She asked me who I was voting for, and I said Mark Fisher, and she marked this column, a different column. So if her tablet hadn't been facing down like this, I wouldn't have seen that. But I asked her about it, and I said, "Are you sure that's in the right column?" And she said, "Oh, I'm sorry, I guess I made a mistake, but I can't erase it, so I'll just circle it." Well, Mark Swan said that she circled his check also. So we don't even know what that means, whether those votes were counted or they weren't counted or what they were counted for. There's no way to go back. But she continued on taking the vote. And she only went halfway down the aisle. There were probably about 15 people in each row. She went about halfway down, and each person had to shout across the rest of us who they were for. Well, Mark Allegro was running for office, and he's sitting there with other Republicans who he wanted to support him. And he knew if he said Mark Fisher, they probably wouldn't support him, but he said Mark Fisher anyway. So. Pressure they put on you, and during the whole time they're talking about unity, that we all have to have unity in the party.
They sound like Democrats.
So the vote was finally taken. We got on the bus because we thought the bus was going to take off without us, but we sat there much longer waiting for the count to be taken. It took hours, and then we had one figure, and then they changed it about half an hour later to something else, and then we thought Mark won the 15%, and then they said he didn't. It was only 14-point-something%. And then somebody said, "Oh, that's just what happened last year too." And oh, that's strange. So a couple of weeks later, I saw something on YouTube that had the votes taken, they had the YouTube of it. And there were only 9 or 10 blanks that they counted on the YouTube. And meanwhile, they said there were 64 blanks altogether, so I don't know where those blanks came from. But if nothing else comes of us meeting here, I hope that we can at least get an honest way of voting at the next convention. We all had name tags. It would be very easy to have a little, paper behind your name. You pull it out, you check off the person you want, and you put it in a ballot box, and it's counted, and within an hour you know who won. Wouldn't that be so simple to do? Instead of going up and down the aisles and checking people up and marking them in the wrong column and then fighting for 4 hours on, who should have voted, who didn't vote, and everything else. So that was my experience, and I thought it was the most despicable event that I've ever seen that had to do with politics. And I saw an email later from one of my constituents in town that went to a couple of our politicians, our local politicians, and one of them actually said, well, that's the process that we have. And if Mark Fisher had had his delegates there, he would have had enough votes. So I emailed back to my reps who were CC'd on this and said, this was the most despicable thing I've ever seen, and Mark Fisher did have his delegates there. The whole system is corrupt. So